Oh, yes, I'm just so very blessed to be here, and you can tell that even though it is getting late, it's still early because our hearts are still full of fire. I want to begin by thanking those who have worked so very hard to go out to get those signatures, and I'm looking at them right now. You've been working so hard, I know you have, and you have an impact in a mighty way. And all of the various artists that we heard from, I don't have all the names, but you see, I come from a people whose anthem is lift every voice, not lift every echo. And we didn't hear any echoes here, expressions of silos. We heard voices of people who have digged deep into the dark corners of their own soul and come to terms with their wounds and bruises and scars and transfigure them in such a way that they say and do and make a sound that touch our souls so that we leave here more fortified. That's the tradition that this campaign is all about. And it's no accident that we are here where we are. We're here in Harlem, USA. And I met my dear sister outside. When I came in, she tears flowing down her face. She said, "Oh, they taking over my neighborhood. This gentrification is just flowing every which way. What we gonna do?" I said, "My dear sister, you know we come from a folk who straighten our backs up no matter what the situation is and tell the truth and seek justice and acknowledge that this is Marcus Messiah Garvey Park. And this is the same Garvey who said in 1916, was just still in his 20s after founding the UNIA in Jamaica in his mid-20s. He said, "The world has made being black a crime. I intend to make it a virtue." Yes, that's the critique of a vicious legacy of white supremacy. And that legacy grounded in predatory capitalist processes that make their moves in stealing land from other peoples and committing genocide in those peoples on that land in the New World. We haven't got to Gaza yet. That's genocide here. And then brings working people from all around the world and subjugates them and exploits them no matter what color they are, because the priority is profit, 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 rather than satisfying the basic needs of those Sly Stone called everyday people. And then the vicious forms of patriarchy that lose sight of the rich humanity of the majority of humankind who are our sisters of different colors and countries. The ugly forms of homophobia and transphobia, so that a genius who grew up just around the corner named James Baldwin, the son of Harlem, a genius who would transform the essay from Montaigne all the way through Emerson, all the way through an Edmund Wilson, and say, yes, I'm going to dip this genre, this essay, into the doings and sufferings of black people in such a way that it's going to have a rhythm and a polyrhythm and a syncopation and a sophistication and a gut bucket funk that the world has never seen on the page. That's where we are, Harlem. Give it up for Harlem. Give it up for Harlem. Give it up for Garvey. Give it up for James Baldwin. The great Sonny Rollins grew up right around the corner. Lorraine Hansberry office right across the street. Raising in the sun. This place is consecrated even before we got here for many, many generations of struggle. In this campaign, I don't even call it my campaign. I happen to be a public face of the campaign, but I'm nothing but a little small wave in a great ocean of a great people, of a great tradition of struggle. But in the face of overwhelming hatred for 450 years, we keep dishing out love warriors every generation, and that's why we call the love warriors. That's not just a phrase. That's not just a name. That's the spirit of Emmett Till's mama when she looked on her baby in Robert's Temple Church of God in Christ in August of 1955 in Chicago. And the whole world It cast a light on Brother Emmett, 14 years old, killed by cowardly terrorist white supremacists in Mississippi. Dropped his body in the Tallahatchie River. They had to scoop it up. And when she stepped to that lectern with tears in her eyes, what did she say to the world? She said, I don't have a minute to hate. I will pursue justice for the rest of my life. What goes into the shaping and molding of that kind of moral and spiritual greatness where you intend always to fight, always to swing, always to be resilient, always to resist, but do it in the name of a love and justice that begins on your side of town, in your family, your neighborhood, your tradition, but embraces oppressed people all around the world. That's the tradition that I come from. And I intend to be faithful unto death. I don't care how popular or unpopular. I don't care what name you call me, anti-Semitic, anti-American, whatever the name is. I'll learn and I'll listen, I'll critically filter it, and then I'll look and say, Harriet Tubman, what do you have to say? Frederick Douglass, what do you have to say? Martin King, what do you have to say? Malcolm, what do you have to say? Ella Baker, what do you have to say? Fannie Lou Hamer, what do you have to say? And I ain't even got to the vanilla side of the struggle. And I know my dear brother Norman, who has such a deep love relationship with the one and only Paul Robeson. Give it up for Paul Robeson. Brother Paul, W.B. Du Bois, what do you have to say? Benjamin Elijah Mays, what do you have to say? Noam Chomsky, Edward Said, what do you have to say? Can we put a smile on your face to muster the courage to tell the truth? So this campaign is nothing but a moment in a movement. It's the spillover of the love warriors. It's the spillover of the freedom fighters in the face of the terrorism that my brother Charles Barron was talking about. It's the spillover of the joy shares in the face of sorrow that Aretha Franklin's and Luther Vandross said. The main ingredient grew up right around the corner. Donald McPherson died at 22 years old, and here come Cuba Gooding Sr. Brother Jim Farrows know what I'm talking about. Sharing that joy in the face of overwhelming sorrow. Wounded healers in the face of unbelievable trauma. That's what this campaign is about. And in so many ways, it's an attempt to reintroduce the country to the best of itself. That if you want to understand the best of the country, you're going to have to be in contact with folk who choose integrity, honesty, decency, generosity, unbelievable courage, cutting against the grain in the world but not of the world, looking for something bigger than them, beyond their narcissism, beyond their hedonism, beyond the rapacious individualism, creating solidarity, creating community, and doing it in such a way that you still got a smile on your face and a little style in your walk. My dear sister Madeline knows what I'm talking about. Oh, yes, she does. Spending all that time with Brother Danny Fitzgerald. Oh, you know what I'm talking about. The Lost Wandering Blues and Jazz Group. You and Vanilla Sister rooted with the chocolate ones because it's human all the way down. But we have to be able to be honest enough to come to terms with the forms of hatred coming at us. And in order to deal with this present moment, this is a moment in which the American empire is imploding with forms of spiritual decay and moral decadence. There's been 70 empires since the emergence of the species in Africa. United States is number 68. Every empire comes, every empire goes, and oftentimes it has to do with military outreach, just like the United States, $62 for every one discretionary dollar going to the military. 800 military units around the world, 130 special operations around the world. Why? Because those in Washington believe in a full spectrum dominance. We must dominate every corner, every nook and cranny of the world. That's not just an imperial empire, it's an imperial policy. And every empire will collapse. And we are witnessing that implosion, that decay, that decadence, when the organized greed so intimately connected to the institutionalized hatred. So you get to routinize indifference toward the suffering of others. The great Rabbi Heschel used to say, indifference to evil is more insidious than evil itself. And so much of our culture is an attempt to create structures of feeling and value such that people are indifferent to those who are suffering. That's why there hasn't been a stress on poverty since Martin Luther King Jr. was shot down like a dog in Memphis when he talked about poverty, white supremacy, militarism, and materialism being the four factors that would bring the American empire to an end. That's Brother Martin, 39 years old in Memphis. And here we are now, well, 50-some years later, dealing with the blowbacks. Malcolm X used to speak right around the corner here on 125th and 7th. He would say, chickens come home to roost. Chickens come home to roost. And what does chickens coming home to roost mean? It's the blowback that comes when you deny. The American empire is distinctive and unique. Ooh, watch the dog, watch the dog, watch the dog there. You all right? You all right with the dog? All right. But America is unique among all empires because America views itself as innocent. The Ottoman Empire, the Roman Empire, no empire in the history of the world has viewed itself as innocent. James Baldwin used to say that innocence itself is the crime. Because the authorizers of devastation who view themselves as innocent never want to take responsibility. That's precisely why, in the midst of poverty, worker subordination, vicious forms of white supremacy, decrepit schools, inadequate housing, or sometimes no housing available at all with escalating unhousedness and homelessness. No serious focus on it. No responsibility, no accountability as the greed intensifies at the top. 1% of the population, 90% of the wealth they have. 3 individuals in the country have wealth equivalent to 160 million fellow citizens. 50% of the country have wealth equivalent to 3 persons. Now, if that's not spiritually sick and morally decadent, I don't know what is. But where is the collective fight back? Where's the collective fight back? And what is distinctive about Gaza, very much like what happened in the 80s with the apartheid regime in South Africa, very much like Vietnam in the 60s, we ripped the veil off and you discover how the lies have been hiding the crimes. All the talk about liberty and democracy, we see criminality, bestiality, and barbarity. All the talk about international law and human rights, can't say a mumbling word about defending 15,000 children murdered in a matter of months. No other litmus test could be more clear than what we see. And that's why this moment is in so many ways unprecedented. They say we're so polarized, yes, we're gangsterized, yes. There are certain lies that are becoming so unbelievably difficult to deny. The innocence is being revealed to be itself a lie. So when Biden says it's not a genocide, he's been a genocide enabler, now he's a genocide denier. That makes him a war criminal. Because he himself is not just enabling, it would not take place if he were not providing that kind of military and financial support. Oh, That sounds so harsh. I'm not hating on the brother. I'm just telling the truth. And it has much to do with us, because it's not just him. It's Harris. It's Kirby. It's Sullivan. It's Greenfield. It's Austin. It's the Democratic Party across the board. The Republican Party across the board. Where are the churches? Where are the synagogues? Where are the mosques? Well, the mosque has been much better than many other religious institutions indeed. But this level of not just conformity and complacency, but outright cowardliness in the face of not just war crimes and crimes against humanity, but the crime of genocide. If you can't meet that test, then it's clear that we don't have any moral fiber in our political class. That all of them, for the most part, too many of them for the most part, are so willing to be preoccupied with the next election and who's voting for X or Y than the precious people who themselves are being crushed every day before our very eyes. And Biden himself, what he said in Detroit the other day, I probably had a black person writing a speech for him, but he said, well, what would America have done if they were black folk who broke into the U.S. Capitol January 6th? And of course, black folk raised that question the same day we saw it. Would have been massive attack, massive assault, because white supremacy is still operating. But then we come right back to Biden and say, what would you do if 40,000 white brothers and sisters were being murdered in the name of a genocide by Arabs or Muslims or Africans or black people? And we know the tragic answer to that question. There would be such immediate solidarity with those white folk who are undergoing such genocidal assault. So there's a white supremacist dimension of what is going on in Gaza that we must be explicit about, because it goes hand in hand with the ways in which white supremacy is operating in the United States. The double standards, the overwhelming hypocrisy. And there's no accident that Biden talks about it not being a genocide, because those international courts could be on their way to his house. Just like it should have been on the way to Nixon's house and a whole host of other presidents and political elites. And this is not a matter of moral purity. It's a matter of pointing out overwhelming hypocrisy if you actually have a deep concern about precious people, no matter who they are. In this case, precious Palestinian men, women, and children, disproportionately women and children who are being murdered daily. And if America can't meet that litmus test, you can be assured you can never depend on any politician in regard to any issue of justice, be it at home or any other part of the world. And that needs to be said over and over and over again, and it's going to be shocking. I go through airports. I was just in Scotland yesterday, as my brother mentioned, just made it back and went to the reparations conference in Washington, D.C., and spoke last night and was there. My dear brother, how you doing? Good to see you there, man. God bless you. Abyssinian Baptist Church represented right there. My dear brother Calvin Butts, who we love, passed. But they run into him in the airport. They say, Brother West, I don't know why you just always so full of indignation. Why are you mad all the time? You got all of this rage inside of you. Why don't you just settle back and, I guess, have a little cognac or something? What's the problem? And I said, no, you see, I was raised and reared a certain way. To tell the truth and condition of truth is to allow suffering to speak. To pursue justice. Because justice is what love looks like in public, and tenderness is what love feels like in private, You attempt to be a loving and a tender person. And I come from a rich tradition of a black people and a black tradition who have always connected toughness with tenderness. That's why Otis Redding can sing, try a little tenderness 1 minute and get funky the next. Because they go hand in hand if you are a love warrior. A love warrior. And people say, oh, Brother West, love has no role in politics whatsoever. What's all this talk about tenderness and sweetness and gentleness? I said, no, I'm going to be true to my tradition, and I come from a soulful people, and soul ain't nothing but the sharing of a soothing sweetness against the backdrop of grim catastrophe. There's nothing wrong with sharing sweetness in a movement tough about truth and committed to justice. And so when the country has to make a choice between a bona fide gangster, we got our little precious one here with her stick, a bona fide gangster like Trump, and the choice between war criminal, genocide denier, genocide enabler, Biden, what are we going to do? Well, I come from a people in 1837, Henry Highland Garnett brought together the first gathering of free black people. It's in Philadelphia. And he said, black people, let us never confuse our situation with that of the Israelites of Hebrew scripture. For black people, Pharaoh is on both sides of the bloody Red Sea. Brother Kevin, you know what I'm talking about, brother. How you gonna deal with Pharaoh on both sides of the bloody Red Sea? You're going to have to fight to make a way out of no way. People are going to tell you you have the chance of a snowball in hell. That's what they told Sojourner Truth. She said, do you know what my last name is? It's Truth. Truth crushed the earth will rise again. No lie can live forever. No matter what is said, no matter what kinds of attacks and assaults they put on you, we will find a way out of no way. Working people found a way out of no way given the greediness of capital and the greediness of bosses. They came together, they organized, they mobilized, there was solidarity. They had solidarity not just with each other, but with around the world. So I'm running for president in order to be head of the empire, in order to dismantle the American empire. I am an anti-imperialist candidate across the board. In the name of Alambe Lumumba, my dear brother who comes right out of this great community. Never forget that, brother. Always on fire as an anti-imperialist. Voices inside of oneself. And part of the afterlife of those voices has to do with the life that we live and the voices and the witnesses that we give the world. So I'm abolitionist about poverty, absolutely. I don't want a liberal version of dealing with poverty. We can abolish poverty. They just authorized $200 billion for F-35s, 20 of them. That money could be transferred in such a way that we could wipe out poverty with basic income, with a right, human housing as a right, health care as a right, supporting the militant wing and the trade union movement to make sure that the trade union movements themselves don't become so accommodated to the bosses that they give up on making the stronger, crucial demands so that workers can live lives of decency. Dealing with the fossil fuel greed, the greed of the fossil fuel companies at the top that are inseparable to sit at the center of the ecological crisis, making it difficult to make the shift from extractive economies to regenerative ones. We can go on and on and on. But if we don't get ourselves together, if we don't get our souls together, if we don't get fortified enough to muster the courage to tell the truth, the courage to organize, the courage to sustain our struggle. Remembering what Martin King said when he said, I'd rather be dead than afraid. And Mary Ellen Pleasant said when she said, I'd rather be a corpse than a coward. That's what love warriors do. That's what you all have been doing. We just got North Carolina yesterday. Just got North Carolina yesterday. Oh yes, we on the move. And North Carolina means the world to me because that's John Coltrane country. That's the love supreme. That's Giant Steps. That's After the Rain country. Yes, indeed. So the question becomes, will we be fortified? Will we fight together? Will we stay together? Will we struggle together? Even if we have disagreements, we have to have a commitment deeper than the disagreements, because the focus is on the suffering of precious people to make sure that their lives are such that they can live them with decency and dignity. That's what we are about. That's what we are about. And the only way you do that is have a moral and spiritual backdrop and a moral and spiritual spine. And don't let folk divide and conquer. I tell the story all the time. People come up to me, say, Brother West, I'm so glad to be your white ally. I said, my white what? Your white ally. I said, oh, well, let me tell you a story. There's a brother named Jerry used to play the drums for Sly and the Family Stone. They were right here in this park in 1969, a few months after Woodstock. The Questlove just put in a film. And if you look at Sly, you saw Vanilla Brother playing the drums. And when Sly says, I want the drummer song, he didn't say, we're going to have a white ally play the drummer song. No, the white brother's in the band. He's in the band. He's not a white ally. When you're in the band, that's part of the solidarity. You already have earned your space. He hits the drummer song, and then Larry Graham hits the bass. Then Sly hits the organ. And same is true with Miles Davis, with Bill Evans. He's a white brother on the piano. You think Miles is going to turn to Gil and say, we're going to have a piano solo by the white ally? No, he's a white brother in the goddamn band. When you're in the band, you've already earned your spot because you sacrifice, because you're willing to pay it all. That's what this campaign is about. Thank you all for being here. Stay strong. Stay strong. We are changing the world. We're going to continue to change the world. Nobody's going to discourage us. Nobody's going to try to beat us down. Brother Steph, thank you so much for your magnificent work, and all of you who are here. God bless you.